Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
We have a quorum now, so we can get started. Julian, can you start the recording?
This meeting is being recorded and or transcribed.
Right, looks like it's been started. The time is 10:02. And I'd like to call to order the West Haven Subcommittee of the MARB. Today is December the 14th, and we do have a quorum. I'm Kimberly Kennison. I'm the designee for Secretary McCaw. With me today is Christine Shaw. She's the designee for Treasurer Wooden. I don't have any opening remarks this morning. Christine, do you?
I do not, Ms. Kennison. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you. Then let's get to the first order of business, which is the approval of the minutes from November the 16th. If I could get a motion.
So moved, Bob White.
Thank you, Bob.
Second is Steve Belsinger.
Thank you, Steve. Any discussion? I hear none. Julian, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Felsigno?
Yes.
Ms. Shaw?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Kennison?
Yes.
And
Really, I'm here too, Patty.
Okay.
Pat, what's your vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
And has Tom Hamilton joined? All right, that's everybody.
Thank you. The minutes have been approved. So the next item on the agenda is an update from the Cohn-Resnick forensic audit that is underway, and I'll give a very brief update. I did give an update at the MARB meeting, and I will continue to give updates as things move along. They have had their first site visit. They have received some materials. I do know that they are waiting for some information from the last site visit. They received some feedback, but it is some of the responses are starting to get slowed down. And so with that, I would like to, Frank, I want to make sure that you have the appropriate help that you need, and I know staffing is going to be one of the items on our discussion today, but it's important to make sure that the forensic audit gets proper responses.
You are no longer muted.
Well, that you are planning to provide all of that information this week, and Frank, any other thoughts?
Yeah, the largest data request was copies of all the canceled checks. That took me a while to get them from the bank website, but all that got loaded up to the Cone site yesterday.
Okay. But that's not what I was referring to. I think there were other open items that they're waiting for. So we don't have to go through them in detail, but I would suggest that will you be able to provide that to them this week? Just a yes or a no?
I think yes. Some of the data is coming from other areas, so.
Okay. Very good. If you are in assistance or need assistance to react to their requests, Frank, you please bring that to my attention, to Julian's attention. Mayor, I know that you want to be tentative to making sure that he gets the help he needs to get through these things.
Yeah, I certainly will.
Thank you.
When Frank's referring to canceled checks for, that was issued to Compass, or just every check that was issued to anyone?
Every check.
I do not know the details of their requests, Pat.
Well, that's the question I'm asking.
It was a canceled check for any charge that was put through on the interim report to the state.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The other item that is pending, and I'm not sure if it warrants feedback from the mayor, and that is the prior year work, some work papers that were from the prior year audit, Mayor. I'm not sure if you had given a blessing to your current auditors, Clifton, Larson, and Allen, and to make sure that they may need your approval to release information from their audit to Cone Resnick. So if it does warrant your approval, could you please make sure that that is taken care of, and that CL&A will respond to Cone Resnick as well?
Yeah, I sent a letter or an email to CLA, a letter of introduction, and Cone Resnick and CLA have been communicating directly.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that they have approval from you to release those work papers, or whatever that information is that they requested. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for Cone Resnick. I do not think that they have another on-site visit planned at this very moment, but that could be forthcoming as things progress.
I just have a quick question on the timeline.
Yes.
What is the timeline that they're expecting to need to complete this? It seems that this is something that should be expedited, to say the least, and it seems that it's something that's of great importance to to what we're doing here in West Haven, because it sheds a light on problems that have been exacerbated over time.
I understand.
So I'm interested in their results, and I'm wondering what the timeline might be.
Right. We haven't received that as of yet. We're anticipating that we would have that in the next couple of weeks. They needed to, the slower that the responses are, it definitely hinders the timeline. But we do anticipate that it's not going to take through March, and I don't think what the city of West Haven wants it to wait until the end of this contract, which is March. But we're anticipating that it would be in the first few months. I don't think we'll see it in January, just based on the extensive work that they're going through. In addition, we had, in their second statement of work, we asked them to provide us some feedback that was due for the 15th, which is actually this Wednesday, to take a look at the way where the state of Connecticut and OPM is gathering information for the reporting that is coming up at the end of January, and any recommendations that they would have to enhancements to the system. So that is underway for delivery this week. So that was going on at the same time as the West Haven gathering. So we are anticipating that we will see that in the near future. And it is a request of the Secretary.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Memorandum of Agreement and Action Plans. And included in the packet today is the mayor's letter to Secretary McCaw. And, wait a minute, let me make sure. Yeah, that was included in the packet. We want to let you know that we have received their purchasing plan, and I guess it's purchasing / AP. It's more than one. And the status of that we will go over today. And in addition to that, we have received, I guess it was called a draft of the first report of the action plan for the information technology security upgrade, as that has been prepared for us to discuss today. And the plan still needs to address the personnel department and issues that are still pending in that category. Oh. Mr. Hamilton has joined us.
That should be done next week.
One of the other items in the MOA is, I don't know the anticipated date that we will receive the personnel department. I know in the minutes it stated that we should receive it in 2 weeks, which would have been around the 15th. I just want to confirm with the mayor that is the intentions of, and/or Frank,
Yeah, you're on.
the intentions of the personnel action plan.
Nancy Rossi, yes, it should be received next week. The Personnel Director is working on it, so that is the anticipated date. But she has been working on it with Michael Milo.
Okay, so we should have it in time for the MARB meeting, even
Yes.
though we usually take the work and do it here at the subcommittee level. We would be able to give an update at the MARB meeting. We should have that.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the city and let them provide us with an update of the action plan for purchasing, please. And then we'll go on to the IT.
So you've gotten an update of the purchasing initiative. We have communicated to all the department heads. A communication from the mayor has gone out instructing them that the mandatory training is required. I've gotten feedback from each department as to who within their staff will be responsible in Munis, so that we can make sure that everyone is trained. Currently, our IT manager, as well as the purchasing consultant that we've hired, is working with Tyler Technologies to go through the workflow and the approvals and the securities within Munis. So they are cleaning all of that up as well. The positions have been, the job descriptions have been written. They are with personnel. They did not make the council agenda. It was late getting to them, that was my fault. I didn't get it to them by noon on Tuesday. However, we are moving forward. We are going to have those jobs posted. The council realizes that these are critical positions. The documentation has been provided to them, and I expect to have that on the 24th, at which point they will give the formal approval to go through the hiring process. At that time, we should have resumes hopefully starting to come in, so that there should be no delay on that. That would be the the procurement director, which is a new position, as well as a purchasing specialist or admin to support all of the documentation needs within that department. We have rewritten the position for the current position already budgeted within the city. That will become a buyer position. That is also with personnel. It just needs to get the union approval for the change in the job description and duties. There should be no change to salaries from the analysis I've done. Buyers in other municipalities are being paid an equivalent amount to already what's been budgeted. So there should be no monetary impact on that as well. The open accounting position, the Assistant Finance Director is currently reviewing the needs for that position. He told me that he would have a job description written for me by the end of this month. So once that is taken care of, we'll get that approved by the union, we'll get that posted and filled. The open position currently within finance, that is the junior financial analyst position that was vacated as that individual moved into the accounts payable spot. That has been posted as well. We have begun getting resumes for that. So anticipating the review and interview process within the next week or so. So things are moving very well, I think, for the open positions within finance. We are looking at a possible new position for IT, and I think that's going to get covered in the IT initiative, so I won't discuss that here. But that takes care of the open positions for finance. Do we have an update on the personnel, the HR generalist?
I think
Oh, and Michael will give an update on the HR generalist position.
they have that. I don't think they know they have your, sorry. This is Michael. The Human Resources Generalist position, I'm meeting with PM Alvino tomorrow, she's the director. When I met with her last week, she conducted an interview with someone that she was impressed with and was thinking of hiring. She had to do a background check, and she also wanted to have one more conversation with the individual. So I know it's in process, and if everything went as she hoped, when I meet with her tomorrow, I'll probably find out that she has offered someone the job, but she desperately needs that additional support, and so she's working on that very vigorously.
And then the other update on the purchasing AP is that I've written 3 of the 4 training documents. Those are ready to go. I expect to have the 4th one completed this week, at which point we will distribute that out to the various departments. Any individuals who want to practice with that in the training system, which is a mirror of the live Munis Ledger, they will be able to take that training material. It has step-by-step screenshots. They should be able to follow the steps. This will allow us to see if they encounter any difficulties during that, whether it's security levels, whether it's just something that they don't understand, so that when we do the formal training, they would have already tried to do it and come to the formal training with issues that they may or may not have come across already. So I've done that type of training in the past. It does make it a lot easier because the people have already seen the system, they've tried it, they know what problems they're having, and they know what to look for in the formal training.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Finish? If you're finished, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
All right, yeah, I just wanted, this is Michael again, I wanted to add a couple of things. Julian had suggested something which we also followed up on, so as not to lose the momentum of making this a critical priority for all of the department heads and the respective staff. The mayor had a meeting about 6 weeks ago where she introduced this whole initiative to the departments, including I think it was fire and also sewer department. But anyway, the purpose of it was to underscore the fact that this is going to happen, it's mandatory, and what some of those changes would be. She also sent an email out about a week ago, just as a continuing reminder to them that this is ongoing, and just because they haven't seen any training doesn't mean that this is a forgotten priority. And so a memo went out to them reminding them that this initiative is moving forward, we're getting closer to the training, summarizing some of the things we were going to do, but more importantly, notifying them that Frank is sending all of this information out, and accompanying the screenshots is about a 6 or 7 page manual that hopefully will also guide them through the self-training that they need to do. And I think it's good because this way, the mistake that was made the last time is when Tyler Technologies came in here to do the training, staff walked in cold and really didn't know what to expect. And I think now, with all of this pre-training and information that's been sent out, at least when we have Tyler here in January to do the formal training, hopefully it should go a lot better. And also, in the meantime, what Frank's office is doing is they're monitoring progress that the departments are making in the self-training to make sure we move them along, and also to offer some assistance if we can, so that there'll be ongoing communication and interaction with these folks over the next month, just to continue to make sure that their attention is on this and that we're aware of where the deficiencies are. Thank you.
I think that Michael and Frank as well as the mayor. So you said there were 3 sets of trainings that you are building in your manual. What are the 3 sets of trainings? Accounts payable, purchasing, and what else?
No, the training documents that have already been built are all related to purchasing. So it's how to create a purchase requisition, how to process a change order to an existing purchase order, how to close or cancel a purchase order if it's no longer needed. The one that I'm working on now is how to actually receive the goods and services within the system and generate a receipt report that would be then processed to accounts payable. And then during the training sessions themselves, we'll go through the steps of what's required for accounts payable. So when they send up the invoice for payment, it would be required to have a copy of the purchase order, a copy of the receipt document, signed by the department head and authorizing payment.
We also,
Now, does the system have proper approval of workflow for authority? So an admin can do let's say the requisition stage, but the department head must approve. Who is the approver? I make sure it has proper workflows of approval.
The department head would be the approval. That is what Jermaine, who's the IT manager, and Wilma are going to be working with Tyler Technologies to get that cleaned up and structured properly. I've reached out.
Go ahead, sorry. Did I cut you off?
Yeah, I've reached out to Tyler Technologies already. We have scheduled, well, we haven't scheduled yet, I'm waiting to hear from them, but we have purchased a block of 8 hours for one of their implementation people to actually come into the system with us and do the changes, fixes, cleanups real time with us, rather than us just sending them questions and them answering questions for us. So it was a little bit more expensive, but it was worthwhile to have someone with that technical knowledge actually go in there and run point on the workflows and the approvals.
Okay. That's critical in this, otherwise, if you move from one system to another, you have to build in the proper controls. You mentioned something about, under 1.6 of your plan, forms. What kind of forms are they? Is that what you're referring to as the requisition?
No, those would be any request for new vendor. It would be, you know, the bid documents, the RFP, RFQ documents, any forms that would be needed that we think should complement the process that's being built. So, trying to move away from the vouchers. For myself, I think the big one is going to be the forms that we're going to be requiring to onboard a new vendor.
Okay.
So, Kim, I have a question. So, Frank, do we have a process in place? I know this was brought up certainly, I think it was last year's audit, probably the one before that, inclusive of having a purchase order process and having those things in place, but also having a preferred vendors list and vetting through vendors. Do we have anything that, like, vets through a vendor for conflicts to make sure we don't have a, made-up company like Compass Investments and, bills just coming in that the town's signing off on and paying? I mean, do we have anything in place to prevent what we clearly know, happened, and we brought to light a couple months ago? So we're not, just signing things off, because it seems like that from, inquiring with you over the last couple meetings, that the process, which you laid out again, is, the department head signs off on it, then it comes to your desk for review. I mean, clearly, that's a bit of an issue, because I'm going to assume that you must walk in every morning or every other morning and see a big stack of papers that need to get signed. So, and, things were signed which authorized payments to Compass Investments, that certainly didn't make sense, and to the tune of $600,000, which I'm not quite sure, I don't recall that company coming before us, because I think we have to, with certain service contracts, over a certain amount, they should come before us, but because of the whole way the system works, which has been the issue certainly brought up and changed for the last 2 or 3 years, it was, wasn't a formalized bid or anything like that. So is there anything that's preventing right now what happened and what's come to light a couple months ago? Something that we know the person is a real vendor, that to verify that the services they provided were really provided. I mean, if you could sign off on something and not pick that up, certainly the department head could do the same. And so, that is a bigger overall, I think, question as far as process. Put aside the debacle that went on with Representative Kamasa. It's the overall process. What has changed in the process that this isn't happening anymore? What has changed in the process that we know that, forget fictitious companies, okay? But we know that even companies that are actually doing work for the city of West Haven, that there's someone to verify, the hours of work or how it's billed out, that the work was actually done. That's part one. So hold on to that. Part two is there someone to verify up at your level that department heads aren't working around and the procurement process by, say, taking a project that should be one bid and breaking it up into maybe smaller types of services that could fly under the radar of the bid thresholds to be able to not go up to bid. Do you see any of that happening, say in Public Works or any other departments that have a lot of projects going on? Is there anybody who looks at that to make sure the bidding procedures, whatever the levels are, whether it's under, say, $3,000, you can do what you want, over between 3 and 10, you have to get at least 3 quotes, and then over that's got to go to formal bid. Is there someone that makes sure that things that should be bid, that jobs that should really be one job aren't being broken up to, kind of work around the system?
Okay, so, to answer your question, part one, regarding the vendors. So what we've started doing is, every time a vendor request comes in, we have changed the form that's needed. We require additional contact information. Any vendor request is gone through. We look at the Secretary of State website to verify that they are actually a real business. We take a look at any information that's in there as far as, contacts or managers, whatever, to see if those individuals are city employees or in any way related to the city. Other than that, we have not changed that process. That would be part of what the new procurement person will bring to the table with his or her expertise in procurement and purchasing. The same as, department heads going in and taking a $30,000 project and breaking it up into 5 pieces as opposed to bidding it all at once. There's nobody in place now that is doing that. I know that Wilma has pushed back on several things so far that have come across her desk, and that has been helpful. But until we get the bodies in place, we're going, we have to trust that the employees, and I know that in this, given what's happened, that sounds, they sound ridiculous, but I just don't have the bodies to go out and actually verify that every document that was sent to us, the work was actually done or the goods actually received. We're counting on the person who ordered it or the department that ordered it to verify that it did actually happen. So we're hoping to fix that once we get the 3 purchasing people in, you know, instead of what's typically been done here in the city.
So what departments, you said there's been, she's pushed back on some requests, so I guess what you're saying is, people submitted some things, some departments, and she said, no, these really, hit a bid threshold, have to be bid. What departments, was that? Was it, fire, police, DPW, parks?
I think there was some in, I think there were a couple in engineering, a couple, and I don't think, no, it's the threshold, I think it's the way that the bids were put together, or the RFP, RFQ were put together, so that all the appropriate information is in the document itself. She pushed back on the venues that these documents were being advertised in, to make sure that they go to a larger print venue, such as the Connecticut Post or the New Haven Register, instead of what would typically be considered, kind of local papers or, of that nature. So things have been addressed and corrected as we go along, and things are found out. But these are things that we never really had somebody in place to look at, to tell us that it was wrong. So everything was just being done as prior procurement people had done it. So all of this is kind of fair game for us to review, fix, put into place any proper practices that need to happen.
Yeah, okay, because I just get concerned that things may be falling through the cracks, and there could be ongoing, pretty similar to what's been discovered, great or small, because, for whatever reason, likely, maybe it's staffing, maybe it's just that, you're overwhelmed and to be the kind of the end of the line to sign off on these things, you really just don't have the time to really review them, where it should be, I think, kind of apparent that something isn't right, okay? And that, we could be still engaging, because the city hasn't adopted practices that certainly the board has pushed for, the audits have revealed over the last several years, that there could still be some behaviors going on that are causing the misappropriation of state, local, federal funds.
No, it's a valid concern. It's a valid concern. So, we are trying.
Can I just ask a question?
Hold Stephen, please. Christina first, please. Thank you.
I apologize.
Thank you, I just have a couple of clarifying questions. You made reference to Wilma, and Wilma pushing back on some invoices. Can you refresh my recollection? Who is she and what role does she play in this process?
Wilma is the procurement consultant that we have hired. So her main focus is reviewing the process, the documents, the contract layouts, etc. She's been working with Michael, putting together the new purchasing documents, not documents, procedure manual, as well as reviewing the city's current procurement ordinances and making recommendations to tighten and change those ordinances.
I just have two quick follow-up questions. Now, you've made reference to the current process requiring sign-off by the department head. Typically, that sign-off is in and of itself a representation that the invoice or the bill is properly payable, that the service is received. So I know that there was discussion in the past about the mayor making clear about her expectations for department heads. Is that currently the expectation, that a sign-off by a department head is in fact its own representation beyond the procurement process, it's its own representation that the invoice is properly payable.
Yes, yes, that has been communicated to the department heads at the mayor's initial kickoff meeting.
And if there is a misrepresentation, what are the consequences? If the department head fails to conduct the appropriate diligence to verify that this is a properly payable obligation, what is the consequence for the department?
Right now, I would imagine that, well, I'll let the mayor answer that.
Progressive discipline, up to and including termination if necessary. No, I made it very clear when we had the meeting, because again, this is not optional, and just going the way that they've always done it is not a choice. They're not going to have that choice, so they have to follow the proper procedures.
And where I'm going with this is that it's not reasonable, Frank, to expect that you would have the resources to go out in the field and verify every single function, service, good. It's just not possible. And so my last question is, I imagine it is safe to assume that the current audit will include some commentary on the inadequacy of the financial controls, as not only as they exist, but as has been proposed and what you discussed. Are they going to be weighing in and offering advice on the internal controls, the checks and balances that you described that you're working toward?
Short answer, I hope so. I can certainly send a note to CLA to make sure that they include that as part of their discussion letter and as part of their findings. I think the other... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, the other thing that we're moving to is making the department heads aware that people will be personally liable or responsible for any bills that are being submitted to the city. So if somebody is just rubber stamping this thing because one of their people said, yeah, I went out and I bought those parts or whatever, and they've come in, employees are going to be made aware that we're working up language, et cetera, to make sure that they are liable for any fraudulent costs.
I believe that language is already in the charter.
Is it? I haven't read through, admittedly, I haven't read through all the charter, but thank you for that.
I'll take a review and send it to you, but I'm sorry, Michelle, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. I'm on a little bit of a lag. I could deal with this. I just want to add with a concluding comment to Ms. Casson and the OPM team that we make clear that included in this review that is being undertaken of the entire procurement process is that some commentary on the action items or the practice going forward, that they offer us the benefit of their insights on that proposed structure. That would be within the scope of their engagement, and I don't want to hope that they're going to do it, I want to expect them to do that.
Right, it would expand the audit. I do think you're going to hear some of those outcomes probably. The lack of controls in the forensic audit, I think that we will all hear that. And in addition, if part of the best practice is, to piggyback off what you said, Christine, is the proper signatory authority of if I am making you a signer and what your responsibilities in your job, and it's not just a verbal plan of action, it's what's expected of your department head. And if my Hancock goes on that, what does that mean? And that I'm assuring that those goods and services were bought appropriately and used appropriately. That needs to be definitely expanded upon, as well as making sure that your accounts payable and your purchasing department is aware what that Hancock looks like for each person, so that when you see that signature come across your desk, you know, and you can identify that's Christine's signature, because I've seen it 100 times before. It's not somebody else's signature who is pretending to be Christine, That information needs to be at the approval process before. It's the review process before it even gets to Frank. as a control for his approval before he signs off on checks. There are two other people waiting, so I don't want to overstep and make sure I give the floor to others. Tom, I see your hand up, but I did mention Stephen, and I know he piped in, so Stephen, do you still have an open item that you would like to speak of? Question?
Well, I guess it's just a comment. Every month we listen to the same girl,
Great.
and nothing gets done. I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're not gaining on this thing. We've already had a catastrophic event take place, and I'm not saying it could have been avoided, but certainly it could have been mitigated if what we've been talking about since I've been on this board for well over 2 years about basic business 101. I don't know any business, small, large, or medium, that can possibly function without controls. And you still don't have any controls. The controls are not in place. You know, it's a hope and a prayer and a wing and a prayer. You're talking about, I imagine this will happen. This possibly will happen. We're taking steps to mitigate these issues. It's taking forever to come up with these programs. My suggestion 6 months ago was go to your neighbors that are really good at it. Milford's pretty successful. You got Shelton that's very, very successful. You got Frida in North Haven that's successful. These are your neighbors. Doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. You guys have a problem. It's a huge problem. You can't control your money. And most important, you don't know where it is. That's even worse. And here we are, we're a board, and we're representing the state of Connecticut, and we're taking state funds and helping you fix your problems. And all I feel that we're doing is throwing good money after bad. Nothing seems to be getting done. I know you're busy. I know everybody has multiple jobs, but you have to prioritize. And this is a priority. You're talking about.
Did we lose?
You lost your
A lot faster than you are. Sorry. You really need to get your arms around this a lot faster than you are. And I really, every time I go to I come to one of these, one of the MARB meetings, I kind of shake my head, and we just don't seem to be gaining on it, and it bothers me. So that's just for the day.
Understand, and it's not moving fast enough for our liking is the issue, and that's when I say, Frank, you're writing the policies and procedures. Could you have a temporary assistant that is with you, a high-level finance person that has been a CPA or is a CPA, and that could sit there and be writing those policies and procedures for you? I know you're intimate with it, but you could bless the work. So I do think you still need more help, because your eye is critical in some of the areas of where it's been identified as control weaknesses. So I don't know, do you have a temporary assistant to help you right now?
That would be Wilma.
Right.
Wilma is actually writing the
No, that's
policies.
part-time, that's all by itself, that's part-time, that's purchasing. Nobody.
There is no full-time person, and that's the issue, right? I can't fight a fire with a bottle of water and no people.
Correct. So, have you reached out to get some temporary assistance? Like, for instance, I can tell you that I helped the town of Sprague to get somebody to write policies and procedures for the town of Sprague. All I did was do the introduction. You interview the individual and see if they can write the policies and procedures, because they've done it for another town. So I think that you just need somebody writing the policies and procedures, and you review them. You can't be the writer, because you're going to spend 8 hours writing, and we need your eyes on the stuff that's good, that has the lack of the control.
No, this sense of the writing is really, the writing is out there. All you have to do is just go find one that works for you. This isn't the first time that anybody has to write policies and procedures for an accounts receivable or an accounts payable program.
I know, it has to be scaled, and it has to be put in place as the way they do business in West Haven, and then taking a look at it from there. Then they'll have a document that can be audited when the auditors come in and say, here's my process. Right now, they're saying they don't even have a process. It's not even documented.
Well, that doesn't use it fuel.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of these processes are laid out in the city charter, how the purchasing procedures are supposed to work, you know, the
Not to
charter also
the detailed level of a real accounting manual.
Yeah, but let me say this, we keep making excuses as to why these things aren't done, okay? It was in last year, all right, and the year before that, we talked about the purchasing procedure. We've been doing it for the better part of 3 years, okay? Purchase orders, vetting things, preferred vendors, okay? That was highlighted, I think, in the last 2 years' audits, the same thing. This time last year, we were told there was going to be a procurement director in place in January. Of 21, and there still isn't. And, you know, I get that things might take time. Time is like, you know, a month or two. The conversations we're having now are the conversations we've had for the better part of 2 to 3 years, all right? And we're not talking about complicated procedures. If the basics were just followed, and a lot of those things, like I said, are laid out in the charter. The charter says that the town treasurer, along with the CFO, are supposed to approve expenditures. Okay, that's what the charter says. I'm going to assume the town treasurer doesn't take.
You're breaking.
But
You're breaking up. Patrick, Tom.
We do have. Oh no, Kim, I'm going to finish. I have the floor. Let me.
We can't hear you, Patrick. Patrick, we cannot hear you. You're breaking up.
Is that better?
Yes,
Try again.
Okay, you got me now.
yes.
No, you're all gobbly.
Okay.
Tom Hamilton has been very patient. Patrick, you've had the floor already. Tom Hamilton has been very patient, okay?
All right, so call on Tom and then come back to me.
You'll have to also fix your connectivity. Tom?
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. I did want to weigh in on a couple of things here.
Thank you.
One is, I agree generally with the notion that the finance department can't assume responsibility for verifying that services have all been delivered and so on, that responsibility does belong with the department head, has been said previously. One of the things I would offer as, you know, potentially an additional level of control that could be put in place is that purchases over a certain amount or invoices over a certain amount could require more than one sign-off, so that would provide some additional segregation of duties. If there was any concern about whomever is signing off on it, assuming it's a department head, if there's some concern that hasn't yet been identified or detected over whether or not that department head is, you know, doing their job properly, that having a secondary sign-off, or 2 sign-offs on the transaction, if it's over, I don't know, pick a number, over $10,000 or something like that, may be an appropriate additional internal control that could be put into place. So as we develop these policies and procedures, we may want to think about doing that. And this discussion is also triggered in my head that given sort of the history and given everything that's going on here in West Haven, I think that West Haven could certainly stand to benefit by forming a formal internal audit department and staff that department with professional internal auditors that would be essentially devoted full-time to going back and ferreting out any instances of impropriety. And given everything that's occurred here in West Haven, I think having an internal auditor or 2 on staff is certainly justified and appropriate. And as we work on next year's budget, or perhaps given the fact that there is additional pilot money that is available even now to West Haven, I would think that might be something worth exploring. And I guess thirdly, and Christine and Kim really mention this in terms of the basic accounting support that the finance department needs. I mean, I think with three, it sounds like you're moving forward with 3 positions in the purchasing area, and certainly that has to be done essentially immediately, as expeditiously as possible to get those positions filled and that function up and running. But then even with those purchasing positions filled, I think that the finance area itself, I think you need, you need an assistant, you need, somebody with a CPA on staff who can help manage this operation. It's a big operation. So those are my observations and my comments.
Thank you.
Kim, could I just say something? It's Michael.
Yes, Michael?
Okay, just wanted to go back to the question or the concerns about the procedure manual. If you look at 1.7 on the action plan, you'll see that we were tasked with having this ready by tomorrow. It's in a pretty rough, crude condition, but I expect that we'll have it by the end of the week, and Julian will be able to review it. And we did put together, or are putting together, this procedures manual, myself and Wilma. Wilma was a purchasing agent for about 25 years in Meriden, and then Frank has been working with us as well, and we've drawn from Norwalk, we've drawn from West Hartford, we've drawn from East Hartford, Glastonbury, Cheshire, Meriden, a few other towns. So we realized that the resources are out there, and we've pulled them together, and as you said about a half hour ago, it's got to be compatible with the Munis operating system, and it's not a simple pull one off the shelf and use it because of the different charters, the different ordinances, and so on. And also, as part of this, we're going ahead with changes to the ordinance too, because they're not going to be consistent with the things that we want to see and the things that we're trying to include in the manual. The hardest thing is then to get people to understand it, and I think one of the things we're going to have to do in early January is have a class devoted to just this, separate and apart from Munis training, and walk people through what they have to do, how they have to do it, and allow them to ask questions of the various people in the room, like our town attorney, our finance director, because it's not just putting a document out there and having controls in place, it's also a culture change. We really have to work to change the way people think and operate and manage their resources, and that's going to be hard. But anyway, the manual should be ready very shortly. It's going to go through, I think, a number of iterations, but then getting it into the basic work product of the key people who do this kind of work every day is where we're going to have a challenge. Just change the way they operate and change the culture.
Agree, and I think that has to come from twofold, Michael, and that is that when an individual, like, two things that I want to bring to your attention is, one, when an individual has been trained, they sign off that they have been trained.
Yes.
And yes, I know my responsibility and what I have done, and what I have been trained to do. So Frank could have the best training manual going, but his training might not work for me, okay? So it is very important that that individual understands that it's a two-way street, that yes, I have been trained, I understand what I'm responsible to complete. So that they understand how to do that process, number one. Number two, once we get the purchasing manual and the new processing of purchasing completed, the vendor needs to understand, I will not accept the process that we had in the past. You must have a valid PO. Therefore, if your department does not complete that work, they will not be paid. No ifs, ands, or buts. They will not be paid. So those controls have to have a drop dead date, and then from there, that is the way we process from them on. No ifs, ands, or buts. The answer is no.
No, that's understood. And the issue with the vendors has been discussed repeatedly by Frank, and the fact that we've got to change the culture outside as well. And information will be going to them, notifying them that without the proper purchase requisition, they're not going to get paid.
Yes, that needs to happen, because they're going to make sure that they get paid for the work that they have done.
But they're going to have a responsibility also to comply with the city's revised standards in order to get paid.
You got it.
Thank you.
So one thing we need to change is the timeliness of just getting the information in on time. So something's due tomorrow and it's not even close to being done. Or it's sort of close to being done. One of the things we mentioned, and it's been almost ad nauseum, is that we set these target dates and we blow through them. And there's no recourse. We have no recourse and there's no penalty for not hitting a target date. You know, I think we just need to be a little stricter on that. And I think some of these issues would be avoided if there was some urgency to meet a target date.
I just want to say in defense of that, believe me, there's not a lack of concern or sense of urgency at all in this, and it's not because of that rather laissez-faire approach that this is being delayed. It's not a simple, easy job if you're going to do it right. Yes, we could slap something together and we can send it up there tomorrow, and nobody would be happy with it. With each development and each chapter, you find that things don't necessarily correspond to an ordinance, to a regulation, or to previous chapters that were written. So it sounds easier than it is, and I assure you that, you know, nobody is lagging on this, and I hear you. I know there's a deadline, and we're going to meet it. It's not going to be finished, but it will be drafted, but I certainly don't want to send it up to the state in the condition it's in, but we'll be there very shortly.
Well, yeah, maybe we have to set more realistic target dates, or let you set your own target dates.
This is their target date. This is not ours. Stephen, this is their target date.
And we're still not there.
Correct. So again, there's another one that's missing down in the training session, and it says waiting for Tyler. I think that, you know, this is a huge process to make sure that you implement. And because in my mind, you haven't had a purchasing department. That didn't exist. You're building a purchasing department right now from scratch. So in here, I think that, you know, if you know that you're waiting for scheduling, Frank, on this timeline, or Michael, whoever has done this plan for us, again, we don't want to waste time on this. I don't want to waste time on target dates that you're missing. I want you to hit your target dates. That's the bottom line. But if you're waiting for Tyler and you say, okay, it's going to be in January, then say it's going to happen in January. If you've been waiting from them since the beginning of December, that's a different story. So, you know, I think that you need to make sure that what is your plan and when are you going to be ready for that training? Because I also think that in this area of Munis, you're going to want to make sure your purchasing person is trained on it as well. Unless you're going to do a separate billing for that, because everybody shouldn't be trained by Frank.
No, and that waiting for Tyler, that actually pertains to the workflow and the cleanup that's being done. The training sessions themselves, those will be conducted.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's, no, but it's a valid confusion because the line item says schedule training sessions. And originally we were gonna bring Tyler in, but, you know, the more we work with it, the more time I spend doing the screenshots and everything else. It's not a difficult system. It really isn't.
Sure.
I taught myself Munis within a couple of weeks. So the training will not be delayed. We will go through, and I can tell you that there are employees here that would probably need to go through 3 or 4 times. But it will happen. The documents will be sent out. The final one for the receiving and the receipt document will be written up this week. I'm expecting to have that finalized by Friday, so that you know, we can start making sure that people have these documents. You know, it's I have sent them to some people, they have used it, they have come back with comments, so, it will move forward. It's not being ignored, I can assure you that.
Any other questions? So I think we've belabored this purchasing.
Yeah, I have a question. What is the holdup, Frank, for these positions? Getting back to what I was talking about previously is, so like we were supposed to have a procurement person as of January. But that's in the minutes of the previous meetings. This was part of the plan that was, as far as purchasing and beefing that up, that's been ongoing for 2+ years. And we were told January 21, there's going to be someone in there.
We had someone in there.
So where's the holdup?
We had someone in there. He did start working on some of this stuff. He did start looking at some of the vendor cleanup for the vendor master. That individual was then out on administrative leave and has since retired. So that is the position that's being rewritten as a buyer, and that is the position that personnel has right now. They have all of those documents. That job description just needs to be blessed off by the union, as I'm sure you know. It's sometimes not easy dealing with getting unions to agree to what needs to happen. This is another position.
That was just what filled in January, and then they were basically out for one reason or another sometime in, what was that, the summer?
April, May or June, I think he went out on administrative leave. So he was in place, and he was beginning to go through some of the documentation and the processes. But in all fairness, although he did have some procurement background in a previous life, what we're going to fill the spot now with is a certified, well, the director will be a certified purchasing person. We used Memorandum as a basis for the job descriptions. We received job descriptions from Berlin, Bloomfield, I believe West Hartford. There were about 12 different municipalities that we requested job descriptions from, and we kind of put a conglomerate together of what we thought the best description would be.
Okay. And in closing, to Mr. Mylone, Mike, I gotta tell you, your comments fall short. Okay, you've been there, we put you in there some time ago, right? And the way you make your comments, it's like somehow, we asked for something 2 weeks ago, you don't have it, and you need a little more time. Dealing with the cities like the movie Groundhog Day is the same thing every meeting, with the same issues. Okay, it might be a purchasing manual this time, but as Kim pointed out, these are your timelines. We could go back through every meeting, and I'll tell you, the same concern and the same thing about timelines not being met, we must have talked about 30+ times.
Right.
Okay, 30+ times.
It's a culture change.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And all it is excuse making. And shame on us for continually accepting it. I mean, it comes down to where, it's like the MARB board is Charlie Brown, West Haven Lucy, and the budget is the football. Okay? And it's like, how many times is it going to happen? The excuses are long since over. I've exhausted my tolerance for it. Okay? As far as I'm concerned, none of the restructuring funds should come the city's way. That $4 million that's out there. That should all be withheld. I don't care what you do and what you get done. Okay? Because you violated the memorandum of agreement. It's been violated. There was targets in there that were violated. And the irony is some of those things that were targeted for whatever it was, April and May, electors still aren't complete. So, the whole thing of we're trying and it's coming, it's ridiculous. All right, you're not talking about a month where the MARB is pushing for something unreasonable. You're talking about basic best practices in municipal government that for the 4 years that I've been sitting on this board, or 3 years, or whatever it is, that the same thing, it just isn't able to get done. And I have to sit there and think that there's just really not not a will to do it. And shame on us for not, creating a consequence for that. Because it's the same thing. We go through every single item and hear the same excuse time after time. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm done on this issue.
Thank you. Patrick. The next plan that we wanted to go over would be I think it's a revised plan, your IT plan. Is this a draft or this is the actual plan now?
It's the actual plan.
Okay. Who's gonna bring us up to date on this?
I guess I can. I am pretty much way out of my league on this, and I think to get a lot of specifics, we would want to bring Jermaine in. We didn't feel that at this point maybe it was time. So I have worked with him, and obviously I don't have anywhere near the expertise to explain each and every one of these, but in order to get to this point, we've met a couple of times with Julian, Frank and I, and Jermaine in an effort to take what Jermaine had developed in an action plan and revise it so that it comports with the action plans that OPM has designed for some of our other initiatives. And I think what you'll see is that he's concentrating right now. There's a couple of areas that are critically important that he's moving on, and one is the transfer of the most recent Microsoft Office release across all areas of the government. And it's not just installing it on computers. There's hardware involved, and there's also a lot of other ancillary equipment that has to be in place. So right now, you can see that as you look through December, that is a big part of what he's planning to do. And then he's going to have training as well scheduled once that's done. That's under item number 2, and that's pretty much where all of his energy has been devoted for the last month and a half, as well as a number of other areas. The other thing is that in item 3 you see that what also is critical is the update of all the outdated servers, which is in various stages of progress, and some have been completed. But right now, that is pretty much being tied up. Where we have this continuing work to do is under item 4, which is the disaster recovery and business continuity plan. And what he's challenged by is first of all, they have to redesign the entire network, okay, which is part of what this entails. And they're also making a decision on what network we're going to run on. And there's 2 networks apparently that are in competition, and he and his staff are trying to make a decision on which one of these 2 is going to serve the city best. We have one here now, and it's working sufficiently. The other network that he's looking at, I think, is one that he'd prefer, but the problem is it's a little more expensive, and also it's not as compatible with the equipment and the network that exists currently. So for the next few weeks, that is basically where his energies are going to be directed. And also, what he has to do is bring on board a consultant to initiate this, to help design our new network, but also to initiate the assessment and penetration testing, which is going to be a key part of all of this design. And then ultimately what he'd like to do is have actually a full-time person assigned to that role, and you see it later on in his action plan. But for expediency's sake, he's probably going to start with a consultant and then look to hire somebody later on. I'm happy to have Jermaine join us at a meeting, obviously, and explain this in more understandable and clear terms if you would like him here. But for the time being, since I kind of worked with him just to get this formatted, I'm the best we have at the moment.
So I'm going to call this the draft format, and as some of these items, and this is the first time that we're seeing this is actually the first time I'm even seeing this, and I thought in the notes that it was going to be provided, that it was going to be a revision. I would like you to go back and have him look at these dates, because it's 12/20, as you're talking about putting in email of 365, that is very labor intense. Is that, are you going live on next Monday with 365 for your email? That's the date.
Okay.
So I don't want to see in progress. If the milestone date needs to be realigned, he needs to take a look at those dates and make sure that they're planned out appropriately. It looks to me like he can't make these deadlines. Don't put down a date and you're going to miss it. Put down a realistic date. Everything in here is enormous networking, enormous servers that are old that need to be updated, and you can get compromised by having, platforms that are out there. You don't even need me. It's all over the paper of the kind of disasters that you can have when you don't have the network up to speed.
I will do that, but understand that Jermaine has been working on this for 6 months prior to you seeing this.
I understand.
Yeah, he had his own action plan, and then it was revised so that it comported with...
I'm not here to hurt the new person, Michael.
No, I know, but, so this is not the first time he listed this. Okay. I hear you, and I'll follow up. Okay.
Thank you, and I want them dates that they're going to meet. I don't want to see a date on here that says system redesign, and it says 11/15/21 in progress. It cannot have that date if it's still in progress. It has to be completed, or you have a bad date.
Okay. So noted.
Okay? Thank you. And I'm not trying to underestimate the amount of work that he has. Based on what I'm seeing here, it looks enormous, as somebody who has supervised IT in the past.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to, we did talk about positions. The next item on the agenda is open positions. Unless somebody has any questions about IT or anything else before I move on to the next agenda item. All right, I don't hear any, so we'll move on. It's the organizational chart. I know that we've touched on some of this already. I do have some questions about the org chart from the past to the current of where you want to move, your proposed future org chart. I do think that one thing is probably missing here, and that would be, I'd like to see the org chart for HR and payroll, as it looks as if that's not under your umbrella, but it is one of those same areas that we have areas of concern, so I would like to see the org chart for that area. Mayor. And if there's any other finance area that I'm missing, then we should make sure that we take a look at that. So Frank, you brought us up to date on a lot of these positions, and some of my questions lie in, there are some staff members that have been here that report up through the existing positions. I don't know how long the longevity is of each one of these people that are already here, or if they're all brand new. So I think that it would be helpful if you could provide us with the, how long have these people been here, So I've heard about Bob Z for the entire time that I've worked here, and which is, this spring will be 2 years. So I've only been here 2 years. But there are other people that I'm not familiar with, and the title leads you to believe it's some of the conversation that Tom Hamilton had, your chief accountant / internal auditor. Is that a bad title, or is that individual's responsibility to be an internal auditor? My guess is that that this person is not filling the role of an internal auditor, but I could be wrong.
No, you're not wrong. I think it's a bad title on that particular
I know.
position.
Okay.
So what I can,
Because otherwise, that will be a problem, right?
right, so what I'll do is, I can color code each person with how long they've been in that department, or in that position rather.
Okay. And then you'll just give me some ranges of,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep,
how
less,
many years, and then if we look at it as like a heat map, we'll be able to see how long your longevity is versus how much is brand new.
exactly.
Okay. Thank you. That I think will be helpful, and then have somebody do the same on the HR side when that chart comes up. Any other questions about the org chart?
Yeah, actually,
I do. Go ahead. Sorry, Tom.
yeah, I do. In terms of the accounting function here, Frank, this has every person listed on it, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm just looking at it and I'm wondering whether, given the fact you only have two people who look like they're in sort of a transaction processing kind of job title, whether or not you really have your sort of your middle line managers doing transaction processing. You know, when I look at the manager of accounting and financial planning, how much of their work is really managing, supervising, checking work as opposed to processing invoices.
Yeah, I don't think that particular person spends a lot of time processing invoices. I know she does help out during the week. You know, we're still, Vaughn is in that position less than 2 months. So as we're moving forward, so Tammy and Vaughn have been doing most of the transactional activity.
Okay.
But, you know, that's not to say that the manager of accounting and financial planning isn't doing activities that can be passed off, right? So once the HR generalist is hired down in personnel, all of the 401k duties that she is currently providing will be sent down to personnel, where frankly I think they belong. You know, so yes, to your point, I think that once we can get the other departments up and running properly, we'll be able to clean up everything that finance has been doing and pare it down to only what finance should be doing.
And so the payroll is not under finance at all, payroll is under HR?
Under personnel, correct.
Okay, that's all I had. I just wanted to, you know, raise the issue of whether or not you've got, you know, people who should be doing more analytical work doing transaction processing, but you're suggesting that the two folks you have there have enough time to do the basic transaction processing.
That's correct. And then as we move towards the improvements with the purchase orders and that particular process, that eliminates a lot of the manual effort being done by the accounts payable analyst. So the time is practically cut in half, as opposed to manually having to input account structure and vendor information, et cetera, to get the bill paid. All of that's already part of the purchase order document. So it's just a matter of validating the signatures are correct and some of the other controls that everyone on the council had spoke to earlier. So once the process is working correctly, I guess what I'm saying is that accounts payable analyst should be able to spend more time dealing with controls and analysis and less time with actual transactional processing.
Okay, thanks.
definitely in the controls category, and I also think that some of the area of control, and I think we've discussed this prior, is the centralization of invoices. They should not be going to individuals at their desk. What happens if they do not give them to you? You still owe the money, and they decide to throw that in the trash. So that actual centralization. So if you have purchasing and you have AP, all bills go to AP. All bills. No ifs, ands, or buts. And yes, I know you need proper signature, but the proper signature should already come in, and all they have to do is match it up. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And that should already be sitting at your desk approved by the department head on a different document in the approval process. All right, any other questions about the organizational chart that's been provided? All right, I see none. The next item on the agenda is the corrective action plan. And Frank, do you want to give us an update on your corrective action plan?
Yeah, so most of the open items relate to purchasing, so those will be addressed or are being addressed as we move forward with this, the procurement and AP initiative. We are putting, temporary stopgaps in place. To Mr. Egan's point, what are we doing now to try to prevent recurrence of what happened in the past? So stopgap measures are being put into place. Since they weren't done by the end of the year, I would expect a write-up again. But I'm confident that we are moving forward with getting this corrected. I think the only items that I don't have control on are the consolidation of the pension plans and the alternative investments. I can circle back with Corporation Counsel to see where he is with those. I don't have any update at this point in time.
So if we look at this as a high level, if everything besides what has already occurred with the new weaknesses that are, well, some of them aren't new, they are the existing weaknesses, you're anticipating that, based on the work that you have completed, that item number 4, which is all in the purchasing area, would be a repeat, as well as 7 and 8. So everybody understands that no work has been done in the purchasing area, but there is work still to be done. That you're anticipating, even before the audit starts, that will be a repeat finding. You'll have a repeat in pension, alternative investments, as well as anything else?
No, I think everything else has been
It's
addressed.
the purchasing. It's
Yeah.
all purchasing
Yeah.
and pension plan. Okay. Okay. On top. And I'm sure they're going to dive deep into the areas that have been compromised.
Yes.
Any questions on corrective action plan? All right, next item on the agenda is any update of the ARPA fund?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I am going to plan together. We are going to have a town hall meeting in January. Due to the holidays, I was going to schedule it for December, but I'm concerned that we wouldn't get, a lot of people, so I'm going to do it in January after the holidays. We have received several questionnaires with some different ideas in them. So I'm going to put that together, and once I, have the town hall meeting, and then the end result, obviously, is I will be presenting it to council, city council members, and then they take it from there.
Now, last week was a meeting held by or hosted by SCROG, which is
Yep.
the Southern Connecticut municipalities that dealt with ARPA. So they had a speaker from CCM, a speaker from the state, someone from, I believe, East Hartford, Westport and Fairfield were there as well. So, very good discussions, I can tell you. The meeting ran for about a little over 3 hours. Very good discussions, give and take, a lot of questions. Some things were clarified that we had thought would have been, not just myself, but other municipalities had thought would be covered by ARPA and not necessarily. All of that information is going to be helpful so that we can move the council towards proper projects. One of the areas we talked about as a group was controls, maintaining the records, maintaining, how do we maintain all of the records that are going to be needed, since these are federal funds, to make sure that bid processes are followed correctly, the bid documents are maintained, the accounting is correct. All of that, especially considering, given my experience with government audits, they usually happen, 7 to 10 years after the program's done. So, I'll be long retired since then, but my successor will need to deal with that. So, so we talked about, I talked with other towns regarding, the possibility of bringing consultants in, short term with a 3-year, 4-year contract so they do nothing but deal with the records for these programs. So, as I said, good discussion. Scroggs sent out the backup documentation. I received that yesterday. So I'll look through all of that. It included the presentations. It included some of the latest interim clarifications from the federal government. So all of that, I think, is going to be useful once we finally get our project list put together, and I was happy to hear, actually relieved to hear, that West Haven was not the only municipality that is not have a final project list yet. It seems we're more in the the larger group as opposed to the smaller group. So.
And one other thing too.
Yeah, I think it's critical that you, I'm sorry, Mayor, I was speaking over you.
That's okay, go ahead.
I think it's critical if you're going to look at this, if you're going to either put out a bid or grab a consultant or a third party to handle these funds, if you decide to keep this in-house, this is a lot of money. Yeah. And you don't have a grant person that just specializes in all of this and understands those laws and understands what's going on. So if there are a third party that is handling that type of stuff and it understands those rules, maybe that is a better way for West Haven to actually, then they would be also responsible for if they're audited in the future, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, correct. And that's what we've always thought right along. Given, the amount of money and all the different projects and everything else, somebody that, like a consultant, to come on for the 3 years and sign a contract to do that, I think that is very important. Also, so probably now about 4 weeks ago, Councilwoman Hosky had also arranged for a CCM conference for us, just exclusively about ARPA money and the uses and the different categories. And it was very good at like all the CCM conferences, because I always learn something every time I've gone to every one of them. So we're doing our best to get as educated as we possibly can, because there's a lot of information out there. But no, we right now, none of the money has been spent. It still sits, and it's getting interest, which also when at that CCM conference that Councilman Hosky arranged, the interesting part was when the money first came in, I asked Frank to put an interest bearing. He absolutely did. Not knowing if we were going to be able to keep the interest or not, and we are, according to the CCM consultant that gave the conference. The only thing is you have to still be careful because you just can't use the interest on whatever you want. It still has to be one of the ARPA uses. So that was good information for everyone that was on that meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any questions about ARPA funds? All right. Next item on the agenda is other business. I do not have anything for other business. Does any of the members have anything that they want to bring to the attention for other business? I see none. Next item is motion to adjourn. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Who was that? Pat?
Yes.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Christine. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I hear none. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
This meeting is no longer being recorded or transcribed.
New, brighter, better year for the city of West Haven.
Let's hope so.
Here, here.
I'm gonna shut this off.
Bye now.
Bye.